customer service might be the only thing that differentiates you today, and especially in today's times when it comes to winning over your competitors. The question is, who really has an idea about customer service? And of course, immediately people will say, in the US, customer service is so much better, and you are right. So I have the leading expert from the US here. I could read through her testimonials, but that would take me longer than the whole podcast will be. I can only tell you National Football League, National Hockey League, National Basketball Association, Canadian Football League, Major League Baseball. She has worked for all major brands. You will know. Hello and welcome, Ruby Newell-Legner.
It's an honor to be with you today.
Thank you very much for taking your valuable time. Am I right? You even were flown from the US to Dubai to do consulting in the places where luxury is basically already the standard. They asked you how to do customer service. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's how my company got named 7-Star Service after the Burj Al Arab in Dubai. And I started working with them in 2005.
Excellent. That is very impressive. Many companies right now say, oh, it's all going online and we are struggling. Many people just don't know, isn't customer service online all the same? How can I excel when I don't meet people in person?
Online customer service is a whole new level, especially now, because so many people are using the online amenities and being able to find what they need. So it takes on another experience, as they say.
So when you now have people who are very numbers driven, let's say board level says, oh, we need to bring in the numbers and, it's COVID-19 times, we have to cut staff and we have to bring in the profit. How can I do customer service better in times where at the same time my leadership team tells me I have to save costs?
The number one thing you need to do is listen to your customers. What are they looking for? Be responsive and let them know that you're taking these steps because of their recommendations. So often I see like on Yelp and on different sites where people go in and talk about companies and their experience, I see that the companies are ignoring those comments and they're not even responding or acknowledging them. And even worse, some of them are saying, that's wrong, that isn't true, and arguing with them on their testimonials. What are you thinking? So to be able to listen and acknowledge the challenges that we're all going through and to be able to adapt the business to meet their needs is the number one thing people need to be thinking about right now.
So when I try to find the right people who are able to do customer service, because we all know recruiting, especially in the US, but also in Europe, becomes more and more expensive and more complicated. How can I find out that because everyone will tell you I'm the best pick mostly because they really need and want the job. How can I find out if someone is a great customer service representative, a great customer service person?
Niels, one of the most important things you can do is identify what your values are for your company first, and then seek the people that have those same kind of values. It's much bigger than just what one says or the years of background in customer service. It has to be a match. So if you have the same basic philosophies and you have clear vision from the leadership and then you hire based on those values, it can make a huge difference in finding that synchronicity of the individuals that are going to represent you.
So that could mean, because when I refer to Europe now, because many of our listeners will be from Europe, although the US, meanwhile, especially for the English podcast already, is our second largest listeners audience. In Europe, often the really common step is when you have a large expo, a large fair, you call an agency and say, could you please send us 2 or 3 reps that just do something at the booth? And then they show up on the day where the expo starts. That, according to what you just said, is the wrong way to do.
It's true, but that does happen here in the United States as well. I work with I have 66 professional sports teams that I work with. And some of them, when they have a large event, they may need 1,000 part-time, just come in for the day, game day staff to do different things. And so they rely on agencies to find those individuals and source them to that particular venue. And in that, it goes back to that company that you're sourcing to. So find out what their values are and make sure that they are aligned with the values you're seeking. Because if just having anybody off the streets coming to report for duty that day, that's not going to help.
So that can mean everything I do. So let's say I have the most amazing booth, I have the best product. When I have the wrong people standing there, everything was in vain.
That's very true. If they're not going to represent your brand, it's going to negate all the steps that you've taken and the investment that you've made in that booth.
Mm. So when we talk about training your people, right, I know that you have amazing training programs to offer. Often people say, well, when I train people in customer service, they only see it as a temporary job. I don't want to invest too much in them because then they leave, or I qualify them and they go somewhere else. How do you encounter these kind of statements? Often these statements come from senior management. They say, we don't want to invest that much because maybe they leave us. How would your answer would be when someone tells you something like that?
You're right. That is a great question. And I do get that frequently. Sometimes people think of customer service as just that person on the other end of the phone when they're calling in for a complaint or a concern or even a question. And in reality, customer service is a philosophy, and it's about creating that experience for your customers and serving them the way they want to be served. So it's much bigger than just a training where you go in and say this, do this, answer this way. They need to step back and think about the philosophy, how they make decisions. That's one of the things that evolved in my career as a professional speaker, is that I would come in and do frontline staff training all the time on customer service. And then they would say, hey, do you have something for supervisors? And I say, yes. And I would do the training for supervisors. And then they would say, how about middle management? And then, finally up to the leadership. And so it only took me 10 years. I'm a slow learner. It only took me 10 years to figure out that I cannot start at the bottom. If I don't start at the top and help them identify their vision and their values and how their culture treats everybody, it's just going to be one and done and back and then trying to help them at the levels of the organization that can't make decisions necessarily. But if you can start at the top and help the executives see that the decisions they make every single day are going to impact the end result, and it filters down throughout the organization. So identifying those things at the beginning helps the executives understand the importance of it. It identifies the culture that they want to create. It helps because customer service is internal as well as external. So it's how they treat each other in the departments, how they identify who they're going to hire, how they treat their employees, all the way down to the person who's a part-time frontline individual. So it's customer service is much more of a vision, a philosophy, a culture building for internal and external than it is to say, hey, this is what you need to say on the telephone, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. So would you say customer service is an issue for board level?
Every single level in an organization, and plus your partners. So partners would be, if an organization subcontracts some service within the organization, that becomes a partner, and how they are treated and how they align with you really makes a representation of your brand and your company.
So you work a lot with major sports team as well, which is not only a very competitive area, but also maybe one of the leading industries when it comes to customer service. And one of your tagline is that you make clients to fans. What's the difference between having a client and having a fan? Because aren't people automatically fans when they go to some sort of sport event?
If we could control that, it would be awesome that we could say, hey, we're always going to have a good season. That would be wonderful. But we know we can't do that. There's going to be ups and downs, and there's going to be good years and challenging years. Right. So the consistent thing that we can do for season ticket holders or any of the people who come to the events is to create an experience that everybody enjoys, even when the team is losing. And I know that's a bold statement, but we have to be able to serve that way. And they become the advocates. A fan is an advocate for you, even in those tough times and those tough years. So they will represent you. They are the ones that are bragging about you, and they're the ones that are, diehard loyal fans. So a customer is somebody who gives you money for a service or a product. But yet when you take it to the fan level, it has a whole new dimension. And the advocates are able to, they can do some of your marketing for you. That word of mouth marketing is so important. So every single experience, every transaction needs to become a positive memory in someone's mind. And then they become a fan and the advocate that I was talking about.
Excellent. What about when companies say we're working in a low margin area and it's very competitive? It's always about the price and only about the price. Do you think there are companies where this is true, or is it just an excuse that they don't want to invest in customer service? Are there companies who don't need customer service?
I believe it is an excuse, because that the reason their margins and their prices may be low is that's the only way they can get the loyalty that I was just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that people will spend more and invest in your company more if they believe in you and they have good service. So if one person has a bad experience, it takes 12 more times of encounters to rebuild that trust. So if you have identified exactly what you want to stand for, your brand is good, your vision is good, you hire the right people, you partner with people who are aligned with you and companies that are aligned with you, then you have a much better opportunity to raise your prices. People will spend more for better customer service.
Absolutely true. So when people are now listening to this podcast and they say, oh, I think we should do something, what are Ruby Newell-Legner's top 3 tips how to start to become a better customer service company?
Wow, that would be like a book in itself. Let's see.
I know.
Top 3. Well, I'll just go what comes to mind. I would believe the first one would be really take a step back and identify how you treat internally your individuals. So it's when every department leader looks at how they treat their staff, and the work that you can do internally will really it's like you're the example. So identifying how you are reflecting and treating and hiring and all of those things go into your customer service philosophy. So identifying that at all levels in the organization can make a tremendous difference. And when you create that culture, that goes to the second piece, is that once you've identified what you want to be and what you want to stand for and what you want employees to say about their experience working there, then the second step is to identify how you want to treat your customers. So, but if you haven't done that first step, it's really hard, because you can't just say, hey, you go out and say this. It's like if you're not investing in your employees, how do they feel about the company? So investing in them in training, identifying what the philosophies are, and then training them to that, and making sure they have that instilled in their being and how they show up for work. The third area would be really looking at your customers and identifying what it is that they are looking for, and identifying how you want to be different than the other opportunities or other products or other services that you're competing with. And I think you can do that by listening to your customer. Those would be my top 3.
Excellent. This is very good advice. Of course, I'm going to put your contact data in the show notes of this podcast when people want to get in touch with you, have a discussion with you, or what I would highly recommend, because I saw you speak in many different cities, even on different continents, from the US to Germany, which is probably the most toughest audience you can have. And I remember that you went down in history for being the first American speaker having their slides translated to German. So that was not only walking the talk, but showing how excellent customer, and in this case, audience service can look like. So for me, at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing left to say. Ruby, thank you very much for your time.
It was my pleasure.